Han Mace. I moved to San Francisco from the East Coast when I was 17 years old, and I went to film school. I didn't complete film school, and it also was like within an art school specifically. So I wasn't taking traditional English classes, math classes. I really didn't have the regular kind of general education that you would get with an associate's degree. So I ended up dropping out of film school when I was about 20, and I was just working in retail, working in bars to afford my lifestyle, but I was still deeply ingrained in the art world. I worked as an assistant to a couple of artists that I really looked up to. And when you're an assistant to an artist, you actually end up fabricating a lot of their art. So I have a lot of experience now with like neon sign bending and plexiglass cutting. We also traveled to France, to Miami, LA, kind of all over, putting up shows that were these very like immersive experiences. But at a certain point when I kind of started to reach like my mid 20s, it just wasn't a lifestyle that I necessarily felt was sustainable for me personally. There's a big hustle culture. You don't always know where your next paycheck is going to come from. You know, your ideas and your art can get stolen, and other people can profit off of that. And that is something that I did deal with. So there was just a lot of things that came with the art world and being a full-time artist that I realized just weren't for me. They weren't things that I wanted to actually pour my life into. But while I did live in San Francisco, I was exposed to the tech field. And I met a lot of people who were in a bunch of different positions within technical companies. And I met a lot of software engineers. And eventually, the role of software engineer kind of became demystified to me. And I realized that if these people could do it, then I could do it as well. They maybe just had a little bit of an advantage on me because they had started earlier, they had focused on this path earlier. Maybe they went to, Stanford or UC Berkeley, but they didn't possess any skill that I didn't already possess or I couldn't figure out how to do. So in 2019, before the pandemic, I started learning JavaScript and I started teaching myself JavaScript. And then the pandemic happened and everything shut down and I stopped going to work because I was in a bar. And that was kind of like kismet for me. That was really good timing. So I started to really focus on software engineering. And in relationship to JavaScript, I also learned Python. And I did go to a boot camp. The first boot camp that I went to was General Assembly. I didn't necessarily learn anything new there because I had been self-studying and teaching myself pretty much full time for about 6 months at that point. But I had a great opportunity to build some personal projects, which I hadn't done at that point, and also work in a community. General Assembly was really good about giving you almost a taste of what a like day-to-day software engineer life will be like. We met on Zoom 9 to 5. We had projects that we worked on together. We had sprints, deliverables, things that really mirror what the professional ecosystem looks like. So after I was done with General Assembly, it was still 2020, and 2020, the job kind of ecosystem, the job atmosphere was very similar to what it is now. There wasn't a lot of hiring going on. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a big flood of new people in the market. And I was just getting rejection, more ghosting than even rejections, but I was not going anywhere with what I had. So I thought to myself, if I'm like not really getting anywhere as it is right now, I'm going to just like continue working on projects and continue learning. So I actually ended up attending a second boot camp, Springboard. And Springboard is way different than General Assembly. It's completely self-paced. The main component, the main draw for me was that I got matched up with a mentor. So I would meet with my mentor for an hour every week, and he really instilled in me the confidence to start applying again about halfway through my springboard journey. So I had a couple job interviews. I was getting, I was actually hearing back on my resume. And I ended up getting two job offers before I was even done with Springboard. And I did accept one of them. And so then I kind of rushed up to finish Springboard so that I could get working at my full-time job. So that was September 2021. And I've been at that company now for 2 years. And I've already had a promotion. I'm leading my own project. I've represented us at conferences. I've given webinars representing us using a third-party technology, just all sorts of stuff. So it's really worked out very, very well for me. I recognize that it kind of was a very special and lucky turn of events. But there were so many times between 2020 and when I first got hired that I didn't think it was going to happen. I was like, I don't know, but I'm not hearing back. I'm not seeing anything. Nothing is changing. Nothing is happening. I almost couldn't even envision myself as a software engineer at certain points. But I'm so thankful and I'm so glad that I kept persevering and I kept trying. And every rejection, every no, every time something didn't work, that was just one step closer to the time that it actually paid off and that something did work. And I was really lucky to end up at the company that I'm at. They've given me so many opportunities. And, it might not be your first job that you get so many opportunities at, but there is somewhere out there that will, take a chance on you, help you grow, help you learn. It might not be your first job, it might not be your second job, but eventually you'll land at a place where it's a community that you can mesh with and that will foster something in you. Oh, you're still on mute.
Oh no. Thank you. Thank you so much. So everybody, if you have questions for Han, again, you are welcome to put them directly in the chat. You are welcome to raise your hand. And you are welcome to just unmute and ask. Again, this is a very casual conversation, so please feel free just to ask whatever you're interested in. And Han, while we get some questions going in the chat box, we had gone through a couple topics that we could potentially cover. And so, I think one that a lot of people have on their minds right now, especially since the hiring market is a little bit more difficult, well, a lot more difficult than it's been recently, is networking online. What are your thoughts about how someone who's just getting started can do that successfully, especially at a time when there's so much junior talent looking for a role?
Yeah, so definitely networking is not the area that I'm strongest in because I definitely get a lot of social anxiety and I get a lot of anxiety meeting big groups of new people. But there are a couple things that you can always focus on and that can maybe elevate you and set you apart from other people. When it comes to networking, things like meetup.com are a really, really, really great resource. There's a lot of meetups that are still virtual. So then that means that if you live like in a small town in Iowa, you um, look for maybe more niche categories in, or just going to more generalized software. I'm a bit harder.
Hey, Han, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but your video is glitching and we're not actually able to understand what you're saying. Are you still there? Sure, she'll be back. There you are. Hey, Han, you're muted again because you came back in the room. So it looks like your
Oh, sorry.
video It looks like your video was just stopping and glitching, so we actually didn't hear a lot of that. If you're not on a super
Okay.
strong connection, it might be worthwhile just to turn off your video, even though that's not ideal. Then at least we can hear you. But let's give it a try and see if we can maintain the video connection.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's because they like did something down the street with like a jackhammer.
Ah,
Yeah. Okay, so what I was saying is that I'm networking in particular is an area that I can also do a lot of personal development and a lot of personal growth on, because I deal with social anxiety and it can be really difficult to introduce yourself to people and meet people. Um, but there are so many online resources for meetups specifically right now, especially because the world is still kind of in like a hybrid online model. So if you go to meetup.com and you live in a small town in Iowa, you can still participate with groups that are in tech hubs like in Austin or San Francisco or New York. So meetup.com has so many great groups, and some of them are really specialized and niche. Like if there's a specific technology or language that you like, you can search for that specifically and you can join a group that specializes in that. Or you could join a more broad software engineering group. I really love Women Who Code. I think that that's a fantastic organization, and it's not just exclusive to women and female presenting people. It is a open organization. They have a lot of the different chapters have weekly whiteboarding and algorithm prep sessions. So that's great for making sure that you understand how an algorithm works. You get together in groups and you solve different leak code problems. They have back-end study groups, they have front-end study groups, they have guest speakers that cover like a really wide range of topics. So you can join a professional organization. There are other ones like IEEE, Computer Science, Society, and the ACM. There's so many different ways to connect with people who are software engineers, but what you need to go into these interactions keeping in mind is that you don't want to just cold call and ask someone to do something for you. That's going to immediately turn them off to you. That's not a way to build a relationship. That's not a way to build a connection. The point of networking is to build. It doesn't have to be a super deep personal relationship, but to build some kind of relationship with people. So for my background, because I have an art background, I can reach out to people, and if we have that in common, then we can automatically connect on that. Um, so you need to kind of look at someone, try to get to know them as a person, and build an actual friendship. It can be an acquaintanceship, but get to know them before you ever ask them for a referral to their company or anything like that, because just blindly asking someone to do something for you is not how you build connections. That's not how you actually network. So I know some people suggest like um, offering to take them out to coffee and just, people love talking about themselves. So if you can maybe give them like a little interview, like, hey, I saw you worked for this company. And you worked on maybe with this stack. I think that that's amazing. Can I take you out to coffee and could I pick your brain about that? Or I would love to get to know what your experience at Uber was like. Just try to find out who they are as a person, and then that builds trust, that builds a relationship. It's difficult, it's hard, it's not easy, but that's part of, I think, why those relationships are so important to cultivate. If it was really easy to just like poke someone on Facebook and then they give you a referral, then everyone would be doing it all the time and it wouldn't really be that meaningful. So you need to build a reputation that someone can trust. And it's hard, it's not easy. But having a good LinkedIn profile that's filled with content, I get messages from people all the time saying, I'm having trouble in my job search, all these kinds of messages. And I look at their LinkedIn profile, and there's nothing on there. And you don't have to be a LinkedIn influencer. but you need to have some content. I need to be able to kind of get a gauge for who you are as a person, what your kind of interests are, what content speaks to you through LinkedIn, because that is kind of a convention that that a corporate society has agreed upon putting faith in. So you have to play the game.
Those are all amazing recommendations. Thank you so much for that, Han. So we have some questions in the chat box now. This one's from Oscar. Why did you quit art so early in life?
I didn't quit art. I didn't quit art early in life. I still do art. I just no longer have to rely on it to make a paycheck. And it's not something that I'm going to go broke or go hungry or be in an area of insecure housing because I've chosen art over anything else. Software engineers get paid really well. I have good work-life balance, so I'm fully able to do all the art that I want to and not have the pressure of having to support myself off of it.
Thank you. Next question is from Daveen. Can you speak more about what your self-study schedule looked like?
Yeah, so creating a schedule and a routine when you're in this kind of like limbo area of studying is so important. And I think once I got a routine into place, that helped me progress. So everyone's routine is going to look a little bit different. Everyone has different priorities and different things that they need to work through in the day. But my routine was like wake up at 6:30 a.m., go on a walk first thing, just go outside, go on a walk for 45 minutes. That way I wake up, I get kind of my body moving, I get my blood flowing, and I've gotten a little bit of exercise because I'm about to be at my computer for a couple hours. So then I come home, I make my coffee, I had a breakfast, eggs or something. And then depending on what part of the whole process I was in, maybe for 2 hours in the morning, I would do exercises. I would do LeetCode code exercises. I had a list of problems that I wanted to tackle, and I wouldn't spend more than 20 or 30 minutes per problem. So if I couldn't solve it in 20 or 30 minutes, come back to it the next day. Then after I got done with my morning, take a break, have some more coffee, eat your lunch. It's really, really important to give your mind a rest. So I would take, like an hour break or so and just relax, not be on my computer. Then I would go back to it. So if I was building a project, then I had broken up my project into these steps that it needs to be completed. So in a professional context, that would be your tickets that you're working on. But if I'm building for an example, like a social media site, then today I'm just focusing on the like button and I'm just making sure that the like button works. Tomorrow I'm focusing on the header, the banner. And then after I worked on that for about 2 hours, I take another little break and then I come back. And if I was in the job searching phase, then I would start sending out applications and resumes in the evening. And so that's just a kind of sample example of what I would do. Also, I think I would maybe fit in 30 minutes for some LinkedIn time, either writing LinkedIn content, writing some articles just on things that I was working on, or reaching out to people, trying to make those connections and keeping connections that I already had alive. So you need to look and see what are your priorities. What do you want to work on? What do you need to work on? And then look at your schedule. Okay, if you have kids, you drop them off at school. What time do you get back? How much time in between drop off and pick up can you realistically dedicate to some type of work without burning yourself off and without burning yourself out? And then also, you need to take rest. Like you need to have a day that you're recovering. You can't be doing this 24/7, 365. It feels like you can. And I've pushed myself so hard for so long. And then when I hit that wall and I hit that burnout, it's so difficult to recover from. And you feel horrible because you know that you're not performing at the velocity that you just were for what, a month, 2 weeks, 3 months. And it's really, really difficult to build that stamina back up once you take a big, long break. So it's important to give yourself realistic goals, realistic expectations, but hold yourself accountable. Create a schedule, stick to your routine. It will make you feel mentally a lot better. And also create a either, Google Sheets or Excel. You need to track your progress. You need to track how many applications you've sent, where you sent them. If you're doing A/B testing on your resume, which I really suggest, have different versions of your resume, submit it more than once to the same place. But just to see which version of your resume is actually getting past the initial screens. So keep track of all that information. Keep track of the work that you do on your personal projects. Keep track of the work that you do on LeetCode problems. All of this is stuff that you should be maintaining essentially a diary of. And then that helps you kind of quantify how far you've come from when you started. And that will give you like a really big serotonin boost.
That was like 5 minutes of some of the soundest advice that I think anybody could receive. So anyone who didn't get all of that, we will upload this recording to the OnRamp platform, and I strongly recommend listening to that again. I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn giving advice to juniors breaking into the scene, and that's a very succinct roundup of the advice that I see over and over. Thank you, Han. This is from Sana. Thank you for sharing your inspiring story. Can you share how you got prepared for technical interviews?
Yeah, so it comes down to two things. For a technical interview, you can do LeetCode problems all day. And I really, really suggest that you understand what's actually going on with the algorithm that you are using to solve a problem. So, you don't want to just brute force everything. You want to actually understand, okay, this was a good opportunity for sliding window. This was a good opportunity for quick sort. Or, I used bubble sort here, but I really could have done binary sort and binary search instead. You want to actually understand fundamentally the data structures and the algorithms that you're using, because you're going to be asked questions about that in an interview. So then, you do 100 LeetCode problems, you do all of the blind 75 problems, and you do all of the neat code problems. But that's not an accurate representation of what sitting with someone either in person or on Zoom and them asking you about a problem. And maybe it's a problem that you've seen before, but at least for me, as soon as I'm in that interview headspace, I don't even know my own name. Everything that I've ever learned just like flies right out my head. I get really nervous. I get really sweaty. It like is a very anxiety inducing feeling. But now I've been on the other side of it for 2 years, and I can tell you the interviewer is they do not care as much as you care. Obviously the stakes are very different, but they aren't really judging you. And of course, there are some people that are going to be judging you and they're just not nice people. And so you really shouldn't hold too dearly onto their opinion. But the average person who's doing an interview is not judging you. They want you to succeed, they don't want you to fail. And so if you can think out loud and kind of just explain your thought process and give them as much as you can, then they'll actually completely help you out if you get stuck. If you're like, oh, this algorithm, I'm getting it in an exponential time right now, but I know that there's a way that I could do it in like I could solve it in a logarithmic time. They'll 9 times out of 10 give you a hint or directly kind of show you where you could optimize something. So being communicative, being open, and taking your time, actually, solve it with pseudocode first. Solve it with just words. Don't even try to write in any language, in any programming language. And also don't choose, there's certain languages that are not the easiest to interview in. Unless you only know Java or you only know C, I wouldn't interview in Java and I wouldn't interview in C. Python is really the best language to interview in, or Ruby. Even JavaScript. You want something that doesn't take a lot of setup and that you don't really have to kind of mess with the syntactical structure and kind of like little things that make it kind of difficult to just write new things really fast when you are maybe a little frazzled from the experience. But I also do have a list of resources that I wanted to share that I think are really good places to start when it comes to practicing for a technical interview and just getting your kind of technical knowledge up. So I'm gonna actually paste this into the chat. And so just to go over it for people watching the recording later, I have Medium, which is blogging, but there are so many great technical writers on Medium, and they go over like a wealth of different um, topics, and they'll go over algorithms, they'll go over languages, they'll go over bugs that they found. So really, you can learn so many things from Medium. Coursera is like virtual courses, and a lot of the courses are extremely legitimate and actually hosted by universities. So University of Boulder, University of Michigan, you can take college level courses there, and it's very STEM focused. So I've taken hardware classes on there, Internet of Things classes. I've taken a bunch of Python classes. They have certifications if you finish a course. So if you are someone that likes to collect certifications, that's a great place. Educative, I think, is probably the best resource out of all of these. They have an amazing software engineering interview track. It goes over all the algorithms that you'll be asked in any kind of normal interview process. FANG level interviews will ask these kinds of algorithm questions. They also have stuff about specific languages, Kotlin, Java, JavaScript, Python, and they have system design stuff too. Educative is a really, really great resource. They have courses on just about everything. Conferences. So conferences, if you can get to a conference, there's technical workshops at them, and they will go over things. It depends on what the conference is, but you can really learn a lot there. Open source projects. If you go and you find an open source project that's in a language that you like, you can learn a lot about how to structure a project, about how to define models effectively, how to transmit data effectively. So that can really help also with system design and just understanding the transmission of data on a large scale. The Odin project, I'm sure a lot of you know what the Odin project is, but that's like a self-paced course where you learn a lot about programming, and it has, I think, a lot of front-end specific information in it as well. Women Who Code, like I said earlier, the San Francisco Women Who Code, the Bay Area one, has a weekly whiteboard and algorithm meetup. So if you want to practice your algorithms with other people, see how other people solve them, or get a feel for what it's like to solve an algorithm in front of someone else, that's amazing. That's an amazing resource, and it's virtual. So everyone here could attend. It's great. I love them. I started going to them when I was getting ready to start interviewing, and it was amazing. The first time I went, I was in the easy group and I was struggling, and then I saw myself progress, and eventually I was in the hard group. And so that was really great to track my proficiency and track how well I was doing. And then Blind 75 and Meet Code, those are a curated list of LeetCode code problems. Cracking the coding interview is considered like a Bible, and there's a great wealth of information in there about design.
You're breaking up again, Han. I don't know if you can hear me, but you
Haven't
might
heard of that book, or if you don't have it. Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, I might have spoken too soon.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
No. Okay, cool. Um, so yeah, cracking the coding interview, that's if you've heard of it but haven't gotten it yet, or you've never heard of it, that's like something that is irreplaceable. It's been considered a standard for so long. And then finally, there's a couple different publishing houses that just publish really, really great books on a wide variety of topics. There's O'Reilly, Packet, A Press, and No Scratch Press. And that's not an exhaustive list. Those are just some that have my favorites.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that list. Coming back to our questions, this is from Maheen. I'm an entry-level software engineer at a bank, and I find it hard to stand out. How did you make it out of the pack and start leading at your software engineering job?
Yeah, you have to take every opportunity that's given to you, and you need to take initiative and find little things that maybe other people don't want to do, or just introduce room for improvement. So I think where I kind of really have experienced some opportunities that maybe other people in my position wouldn't experience was I created a bunch of visualizations for new features that we had created. So sequence diagrams, flow charts, just kind of bridging the gap between our code and what someone who doesn't know what our code is could kind of digest and understand what the project was doing. This made it so that I understood really deeply all of the interactions and contracts that we had, but also it like got me some visibility within the company, because suddenly, oh, I'm that girl that created this document that now people outside of engineering can see and read. And so I took that momentum and I just said yes to every project and every opportunity that was given to me. I think a lot of um, progressing is about being prepared for opportunity and not being afraid of that opportunity. You know, you can ask for help. That's totally okay, and it's expected. Um, but you should be prepared to, try out new things and put yourself in uncomfortable positions. So for a job at a bank where maybe there's a bunch of other people at my level or just right above me, what are some things that seem kind of antiquated? What are some things that people complain about all the time? Um, what are some places that you can say, hey, I don't have a lot of tickets this sprint. Can I actually, write this ticket to take over some tech debt and to do these new things? Is there an opportunity for you to become kind of a expert on something specific? Do you use a certain technology in one area of the bank that other areas of the bank don't use? Can you do research and become really good at that? And then you become kind of the key person that other people in the organization, in the engineering organization, can come to. So you really have to promotions and opportunities for ownership are not often handed out. You need to really carve out a space for yourself, and it takes a little bit of initiative. um, but no one is going to like judge you for it. No one's going to be upset about it. Your boss and your boss's boss are going to be really happy that you're out here trying to make things better, as long as it's not messing with some KPI that they have. But just don't be afraid to ask your higher ups, hey, can I take on this project? Or I was learning about this technology. Um, do you think that this is something we could implement? You're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to voice what you want. And also, you should be bringing this up in your one-on-ones with your manager. Make it clear that what your goal is. Make it clear that you would like opportunities for impact.
More amazing advice from Han. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is from Jessica. Hi, Han, fellow Springboard student here. Are there any particular skills you would encourage bootcamp grads to work on that being in the tech industry has now taught you?
Okay, this isn't necessarily tech industry specific, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement in a couple different areas. One area that is really just ripe for kind of creating a better self is communication. A lot of people struggle with communication in a lot of different aspects, whether that's from being very shy and finding it hard to contribute to conversations, or maybe their written communication isn't very strong and people tend to misunderstand what they're saying. So if you can find ways and opportunities to improve on your communication, improv classes, I think, are something that's really underrated. But if you take an improv class, you are challenged to completely kind of interact with people in a way that you don't have a control over. And I think that it can be very beneficial to, one, if you have kind of social anxieties and it's difficult to speak up in conversations, but two, it keeps you sharp and it keeps you thinking. And that's what a lot of these tech conversations and technical conversations are, is it's a bunch of people talking about ideas, talking about abstract ideas. So you need to be sharp, you need to be able to envision and keep up with what's going on. Um, Also, you can obviously work on like leak code and mock interviews, but I think another really great area for opportunity is documentation. If you've created some really cool GitHub projects, but they don't have a README, that's not very good. It needs to have a README. It needs to have a comprehensive README. What is this project? How can someone who's never run this project before clone this repo and run it? What are some examples? What are some demos of what this project should even do? The sooner you get more comfortable at documentation and it becomes kind of like second nature, the quicker you become an asset and not a liability. It's really a good thing to have that ability to create good technical documentation in a like corporate and even in a startup environment. There's always a need for documentation. Software engineers do not like to write documentation. It doesn't mean that you have to be the technical document writer, but you should be able to hold your own and create comprehensive technical documentation.
Thank you. The next question is from Joanna. Hello, other than starting Springboard, is there anything else you felt you were doing differently that resulted in the interviews and 2 offers? Thank you.
I really feel like one of my projects is when I started to get more recognition from companies. So in General Assembly, I was creating kind of pretty standard CRUD applications. So I think we did a TikTok clone. That was maybe the most far out there project that I did with my friends, and that was really good for learning how to like save videos and pictures to like I think Cloudflare was where we were saving it or something. But other than that, I did like a social media site. The social media site did have kind of a MySpace capability where you could change your background and stuff, but pretty standard, REST operations, CRUD using React or Flask. So then when I got to Springboard and I was realizing that I needed to level up and create something a little bit more interesting, I created an app that uses Spotify data that I got from Kaggle. It uses Spotify OAuth, so someone signs into the app using their Spotify account. And so I don't save any user information. And then also I built a small machine learning model with that Spotify data. And basically someone would log in, they would see their previously listened to songs, and I assigned them a Dungeons and Dragons moral alignment based on the music. And so I think kind of creating something that had OAuth, it had Spotify API, it had machine learning, that really set me apart now from people who are just doing crud projects. So that's really, really important um, when you don't have professional experience. Your personal projects are your professional experience, essentially. So you need to start working on projects that are elevated. They aren't just simple REST API apps. And so I do have some suggestions for some apps that you could like take and modify, or just like things to think about when trying to come up with a personal project, because personal projects are definitely really difficult. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you do need to show your aptitude and your expertise. So these are just some starting places. I think it's really important to narrow down where do you want to work, right? Like if you just want to be a software engineer and you don't care where you work, then that's fine. Go on LinkedIn, look at job postings, start taking down a list of what technology they're referencing. Are they mentioning Kafka a lot? Are they mentioning Golang? Are they mentioning, a Stripe API? You want to build a project that shows that you have the capability and the knowledge to work with those technologies. And it doesn't have to be something crazy. You're not creating the next $1 million app, but I mean, maybe you do, who knows? But you just want to make something that can demonstrate a proof of concept. And the proof of concept is that you have the ability to work with these things that company thinks is in demand.
Amazing advice. The next question is from Dwayne. How did you, and you may have answered this, I know you shared a lot of resources, but if there's anything you want to add to this, how did you study for data structures and algorithms? I'm trying to find a resource to learn.
Yeah, so I think I've studied it a couple different times in a couple different ways. I would say educative is probably one of my favorite ways that it comes down to. Um, but they all are going to teach you they all get down to the same thing, just maybe using different language. What's going to be really important is that you take notes and you understand the process of the algorithm, like what's actually happening. So I always take a lot of notes. I draw out what's happening. If it's a sorting algorithm, I draw out the array of numbers or the letters, and then I will draw one line, that's the starting, and then the next line I draw what the first movement is, right? So that I can visualize what's happening. I think when you're able to visualize what's happening in these algorithms, they become less complex. So there's cracking the coding interview is how a lot of people have learned. It's not antiquated. It's just dry, and it's not very visual because it is in a book. It's just text. So I think something like educative is probably the best, especially if you're like a very visual learner. There's also Geeks for Geeks, which has a lot of visuals as well. But you're never 100% done. Like learn it through educative, then go to Geeks for Geeks, then go to Coursera, right? Like find as many as you can and keep doing them.
Thank you so much. We have a couple minutes left. If anybody has additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. In the meantime, Han, I feel like so much of what you're talking about is like, first of all, gold. Like every suggestion you've given has been concise, very informative, and very insightful. So thank you for everything you're sharing. And one of the topics that we had talked about covering today was thinking critically. And I'm noticing that every piece of advice you're giving today is based on critical thinking, down to looking at the LinkedIn job posts to see what technologies and tools they're asking for. And instead of just submitting a generic CRUD app, like actually integrating those tools into your personal project to show that you have gone out and learned them. Is there any other like general advice or anything else you'd like to say about thinking critically and how it has helped you, throughout learning to code, going through the interview process, and then rising in the software engineering field?
Yeah, I think Software engineers have opinions. They're very opinionated people. Some of them, are very passionate and maybe too opinionated, but no one, if you are working at a place and they kind of just want you to like shut up and do the work, then that's one thing. That's not going to foster a sense of growth within you. That's not going to make you a better software engineer. Most places don't want someone who's just going to like shut up and do the work. They want someone who is having conversations. Okay, we said that we were going to get the data from database A and then store it in database B, but you should say, why are we storing the same data twice? We're not even manipulating it. Can't we just make the call from database A? If something doesn't smell right, that's a concept that you'll hear a lot in software engineering, the smell. This code smells. There's something off about it. It doesn't seem very intuitive. It doesn't seem very sleek. It doesn't seem very smart. Call it out. Like you're totally allowed to say, hey, I don't understand why we're doing this. This doesn't really make sense to me. Um, a good company that's going to foster growth within you is not looking for you to just blindly say yes to every single decision that's made. There should be room and space for discussion, conversation, and even debates.
Thank you so much. Another piece of great advice. And then I guess the last thing I'd love to touch on is you had talked about the interview process and what you can learn from rejection. I know that receiving a rejection can be demoralizing, disappointing. None of us enjoy receiving a rejection, especially given the amount of work that frequently goes into job interviews today. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by learning from rejection or what you personally learned?
Yeah, so I had an interview with an electronics company, and the first portion was an online assessment, and I over optimized my my code that I submitted because I wanted to show them, hey, I don't have a bachelor's degree in software engineering, but I want them to know that I do understand algorithms and I do understand data structures, and this would be, a good use case for a sliding window. Um, so I created kind of a more complex answer than maybe they were looking for, but it got me the first technical interview. The first technical interview, I bombed. I did not do well, and it was awkward. It was me and three other people. There was the main interviewer and then like two people shadowing him, and I don't even remember what it was. It was just a regular algorithm question, and like I said, everything that I had ever learned just like left my body. So I didn't expect to get past that first round, but I was kind of grateful that I had it. At least, I now had my first real interview experience, my first technical interview. So then they, to my surprise, asked me to come back for a full day. So it was another technical interview. It was a systems design interview. It was the people HR interview, and it was the hiring manager interview. So it was literally four interviews, like an hour long each. And I had studied nonstop between the first technical interview and that second technical interview. So my performance wasn't, perfect, but I know that I had improved a crazy amount because I had taken all of the places that I knew I didn't feel comfortable or that I know that I had messed up on. I was brushing up on specific algorithm knowledge. I was brushing up on language, making sure that I sound like I know what I'm talking about. The technical part, they told me it was going to be a front end interview, so I was brushing up on React and just simple DOM stuff. And it was just a sorting algorithm question, which I still don't really understand. It was not a front end interview at all, but I did the sorting part totally fine. I used a frequency counter. Then the system design interview, I had no experience with system design, and they asked me how would I design a dashboard. And I blanked. I was like, I really don't know. And they kind of held my hand through that interview, but I felt like our personalities were getting along. And after I kind of got my bearings, I think I did fine. It was talking about emitting notifications and and I talked about a database and all that kind of stuff. Then they asked me how I would roll it out. And I have no professional knowledge, no professional experience. So I don't know what the rollout process is. So I kind of, spoke about that, how I did not know, but I guess I would, bring it to the product manager or something. They seemed okay and understanding with my lack of knowledge. The HR interview went great. The hiring manager, that he went great. He was speaking as if he was about to hire me on the spot. And then they still rejected me. And they rejected me saying that I didn't have enough experience. And that was something that I had been very open and honest about from the beginning of that interview. When I was talking to the recruiter before the first technical interview, I have no experience. This would be my first technical job. Is that okay? And they said, yeah, we have plenty of resources. It's totally fine. And then also the people who were doing the system design interview, they had like misrepresented things that I said while we were conversing in a casual and joking manner as wrong answers that I had given them. And so that really hurt. I felt very blindsided. I felt very shocked because going from the first technical interview where I was sure I bombed it to getting the second set of interviews where I knew I did so much better. Like my growth over the week was insane. To not getting it, it felt really confusing. It felt really difficult. But that was my first interview process. And so I figured it can't really get worse from here. Like I feel like I'm humiliated almost because I just, shared that this was my first experience with these people. I really tried. I had conversations. I admitted when I didn't know things, and those are all, difficult and vulnerable things to show people, especially show strangers. Um, and it didn't work out. But it not working out is the worst case scenario, right? So I got the call that I was not, getting an offer, and I went to McDonald's and I, had a little cry, and then I moved on. And there was nothing I could do about it. All I can do is take, okay, here's some quantifiable points that I know I could have done better on. This algorithm wasn't maybe the most optimized. Okay, well, let's brush up on a better algorithm in case I get asked something similar to this. Well, now I know what system design is. And now I know that maybe I should stay up on how to build a dashboard theoretically in case I get asked that again. You can tell what moments you kind of floundered on, and then just make a mental note and then use those as your next set of goals for while you're working on your personal projects and while you're studying. But a rejection is not the end of the world. You just kind of, you have to take it for whatever lesson you can squeeze out of it. And at the end of the day, like, it's a good thing to be taught something, right? Like, these lessons are going to help us grow. If everything went perfectly smooth the first time, then you wouldn't really experience any personal growth.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We have just a few minutes left. There's just one last question I'm hoping we can squeeze in.
Mhm.
It's from Tisby. Designing the UX or UI of an app can be time consuming, aside from some software engineers not having the design skills. What's a good process for planning the look of personal projects?
Well, what do you want to be? If you don't want to be a front end engineer, you don't have to be a front end engineer. Focus on the back end capabilities. Like when I was building my personal projects, I did do a lot of front end design just because it was very creative and liberating to me. But I have not touched a front end in 2 years. I'm not a front end engineer. I will probably never work on the front end again. I work on the back end. I work with the data. That's what I want to do. So if you aren't trying to sell yourself as a full stack engineer or a front end engineer, then focus on these data intensive applications, and you can totally, React is um, such an easy and approachable uh, kind of framework. If you use something like Figma, you can design something quickly in Figma, and Figma will print out the CSS for what you just designed. So keep it simple, keep it minimalistic, but there are also tools and resources out there that will kind of give you a little bit of, not a cheat, but just eliminate a couple steps for you. And they can help create the CSS and the kind of visual domain of whatever project you're working on. But if you want to be a front end engineer, you want to be a full stack engineer, then you do need to dedicate that time into the user experience and to the user interface, because that is your portfolio, that's your calling card. So it really just depends. If you want to work low level, if you want to work on, IoT devices, or if you want to work in C, then the front end is not really your focus. And I think the people that are interviewing you are going to understand that. And a lot of people that are interviewing you are not even going to look at your projects. They're just going to look at your description in your resume.
Yeah, I agree, Robin. Really amazing answer. Thank you so, so much. Every single answer you gave today was absolutely packed full of actionable advice, very detailed and insightful advice, and I think incredibly helpful for where our community members are at today. I cannot thank you enough for your time.
Yeah, I had a really great time. I'm really happy that I was able to hit my points that I wanted to get out. I think it's a really difficult journey. I'm not downplaying how hard it is, and especially like in this environment right now. So all you can do is like prepare for opportunity and try out different resumes, like I said. Maybe name your project something different on one resume to another, and then when you have a recruiter call, you can tell which resume they are referencing based on the project name. Just little things like that. Like, because I ended up getting responses on what I would consider my ugliest resume. And so there's just, I don't know what type of ATS magic is going on in the back end. So definitely just try out different verbiage, different words, and really focus on what those companies are seeking. Because that's going to make you marketable, that's going to make you employable.
Thank you so much. To everyone who participated, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. Han, I don't know if you're reading the chat, but there's just gratitude and thanks just pouring out from everyone. Folks, we will upload this to the OnRamp platform. So you just log into your dashboard. There will be a recording up probably early next week. I will send you a follow-up note via email. But thank you all again. I wish you all a beautiful rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you soon for the next speaker series.
Well, thank you.
Bye-bye.